Harmonizing the masculine and feminine. This is our cosmological story.
Man suffers only because he takes seriously what the gods made for fun.
Humanity chose to believe in the lie of separation. Science has proven that we are all connected, we are all one. Yet as we go through our lives, we feel and experience that we are separate from each other.
We're going to tell you the story of the harmonization of the masculine and the feminine within us and between us over the past 3 months. We're telling you this story as an offering of bread, an offering of what's possible, what is really, truly possible. Act 1, Metamorphosis.
Both Anna-Victoria and I are big fans of the book, The Journey of Soul Initiation by Bill Plotkin. In the book, Plotkin talks about a process that he labels the 5 phases of the descent to soul, and he compares it to the path of a caterpillar going into metamorphosis, which is where we were at this point in the story 3 months ago.
The biggest challenge in getting out of the cocoon and starting to flap your wings is what Plotkin calls the sub-personalities, what in IFS we would call parts. And these are just old caterpillar identities, old stories we have been attached to our whole lives. And we feel that tugging backwards, back into our caterpillar life until we can really get our footing or our winging as we flap our wings and really start to enact our lives as butterflies.
Hmm. And what Plotkin talks about is that your guide to soul is the muse, your inner beloved, the anima and the animus.
I had never heard of anima or animus. I knew that men and women had both energies within them, and that's about as far as I ever got.
I had never heard of it either. And I remember I got a reading once, and the channel told me I have 88% masculine energy. And I remember being proud of that. And I also had no idea about my internal feminine energy, which Eric Godsey told us the anima is the
Yeah.
feminine energy, and then the animus is the masculine energy, right?
Yeah, so one day in class, he was interpreting my dream, and he said this really important character in my dream was my animus. And so I instantly realized I got to figure out who this is and how I can talk to him. And I went and I read the Robert Johnson trilogy, He, She, We, that Eric recommended in 1 week.
Yeah,
And
you
I
read
did
3 books. I remember you said that you read all 3 books since the previous class. And I
yeah.
was like, who is this woman that reads 3 books in a week?
I
And you were,
needed to know who my animus was because he had some really important
yeah,
messages I needed to hear.
yeah. You were talking about it. And then the next morning, you, who I had never even met before, came into my meditation and I sent you this weird text message. I actually went and dug it up. I was just meditating and you popped in, feeling the call to connect with you over this masculine, feminine energy stuff. Are you up for a chat? And it looks like you answered right away.
Yeah, I was off of work that day. And so I was like, what the hell? When you said I popped into your meditation, I believed you. And I thought,
Yeah.
must be for some reason. Let's find out what it is.
And after we had another one of these classes, and Eric gave some advice to a woman that she should quit her job. And you left me this voice note all hot and bothered that he basically was giving everyone advice that they should all quit their jobs. And I said to you, first of all, I think he knows this woman well. And you were putting him on a pedestal, right?
Yeah, you offered me this reframe that was magical. You asked me, what character does your soul need Eric to play in your movie right now? And in that moment, it completely reframed the whole drama that was going on inside of my head. My soul needed Eric to play this role of some kind of rival to me so that I would finally be shaken from this perpetual student role that I had put myself in my entire life. So, what I learned about my animus was that I had been projecting him into my relationships with mentors and teachers. I would put them up on this pedestal and idolize them and admire them, respect them. Basically, I'd projected my golden shadow onto them. All of my genius, all of my brilliance, all of my competence as a teacher, I had projected onto them. And so Animus started to get rather restless around that time. And he had a message to tell me. And it was that he was done playing the role of the good student.
I don't know if I've ever met someone who can transform as quickly and as gracefully as you can, because you fully went from like an crazy woman to someone who completely fell in love with her animus and with her own power. And at the same time, you helped me to go through quite a transformation as well. Now, I had just launched this new initiative. It's called the Impactors Co-op, and it's a community for solopreneurs who want to make their greatest difference in the world. And this was something I was really excited about. And you decided to join and actually came to one of our Monday meetings like an hour later. And in your introduction, you shared that you were having a lot of challenges doing all of your website marketing stuff. And I piped in all excited because we have two members in the co-op who both have marketing agencies. And so I recommended that you connect with them. And then after the meeting, you were like, what the hell was that? Here I am sharing my problems, and you're trying to sell me stuff.
Yeah, I was beginning to integrate animus, and I was taking the risk of being assertive and speaking my truth instead of hiding and playing small and worrying about acceptance. And I took a risk and I told you the truth that I was joining the co-op because I wanted a place to share the tender, vulnerable truths about my struggles and my triggers in being a business and entrepreneur. I was looking for empathy. I was looking to be heard and seen and understood. I didn't want to be fixed or changed or, or sold anything.
And this feedback, it was fantastic that you gave it to me. It was so valuable because I'm 88% masculine energy. The masculine energy listens to fix, listens to solve. So when you said you had a problem, I thought the best thing I could do was to give you two people who could help you solve the problem. I was initially shocked, but then I realized I can learn so much because the feminine energy listens to connect, listens to understand, listens to empathize. And that's a whole set of tricks I don't have in my bag. And this was the
Yeah.
very first time that you'd given me this kind of feedback and really made me look at things a completely different way. And because I received the feedback so well, that told you that not all men are bad.
Yeah, I risked belonging by speaking my truth. And that's something that Animus has given me the guts and the courage to do. I was pleasantly surprised to discover that you were willing to listen. And that's when I realized we had a lot to teach each other.
Yeah. So here's another text message 2 days after our first conversation. You said, I'm excited. The co-op is going to change the world. And I said, I'm thrilled for the synchronicity. We got a lot of work to do together. And then I listened to this gorgeous meditation that you did about the soul of the co-op. And what I felt was this incredible yearning that 70% of people in the world are not engaged in their work. So there's literally billions of people that are not happy, not meaningfully engaged. And in this meditation, I felt this yearning. And at the same time, you were talking to me about a completely different way of doing marketing. You talked about the feminine quality of pulling, of being a magnet to attract more people into the co-op. And the way to do that, you told me, was by focusing on the existing members, making it so valuable for them that the people who are yearning to be more engaged in their work will feel the value, like being attracted to a magnet.
You started prioritizing quality over quantity, and you became a lot more interested in relationships and connections and quality of what was going on inside.
And then it was around this time that in Eric's mentally fit class, he launched the Focus 45, where each of us needed to think about what is our ideal perfect day and we need to commit to doing those actions. And I created this entire elaborate morning routine. The best part was writing morning pages. And then you can see I did it today. I ask myself, what does Damon, my higher self, want me to do today? And what's interesting is my higher self always wants me to be in the feminine, to do the things that are coming most naturally, that are in flow, that are connecting with people. My higher self was almost never telling me to send more marketing campaigns out the door. What was the Focus 45 like for you?
I was having the exact opposite experience. So I had mastered for the past 10 years or so bookends that were self-care routines of interpreting dreams and writing daily pages and having 30 grams of protein and all the self-care things. I love self-care things. The initiation of Focus 45 for me became about actually trying to make an impact in the world. And so I started a Substack and I joined the Impactors Co-op and I went to the meetings and I did the assignments and I created my map every week. And I had to get into action, which is something that my feminine has always resisted and resented. And so I also was pleasantly surprised. I discovered was that because I was integrating my animus and really letting him channel my focus, the work that in the past would have felt like heavy lifting, I didn't feel that way at all. But Animus was showing me that if I get out of the way and let him get to work, that it doesn't have to feel like a chore to me and my feminine. And
Yeah,
that
and
was a big surprise.
and it was exactly the same but opposite for me. First, the feminine gets inspired, it gets connected with the vision of the value that could be created. Then the masculine gets in there and does the thing in order to come back to the feminine, back to my anima, and get a nice pat on the head. Good job. So we were doing the same thing. And I would summarize my metamorphosis. When I was a caterpillar, I was just pushing things out into the world constantly. And by the time I was done this metamorphosis, I was fully in this mode of pulling. And I remember writing a Substack article in the Impactors Way about this new model that I'm now using all the time, the AAA model. Awareness, first in the feminine, deeply connecting to what is there, what is happening, what's the problem or the opportunity. Then don't go into action yet. Then it's acceptance. Accept that I could do something that maybe is not going to work, that maybe is going to make no difference at all. And so, with that acceptance of the fact that I can only control myself, will I still find value in doing the action? Will I learn something? Will I enjoy the action? And so what I found was that I'm doing way fewer things, but my hit rate in doing valuable things or doing things that work is much higher. So I actually have a lot more time for self-care now because I'm doing less stuff. What was your metamorphosis experience like at a high level?
So for me, it was a big shift from prioritizing belonging to prioritizing authenticity. I had a long-standing pattern of playing small, of staying in the shadows, of projecting my brilliance onto teachers and mentors, and just sacrificing being my bold, audacious, authentic self. showing up to life every day with my fuck on my face. I was sacrificing that because I thought it was going to get me acceptance and belonging. And what I discovered was that by finally letting Animus be bold, be audacious, and be authentic, and not worrying about who accepted me, the irony is that I found true belonging instead of pseudo belonging, which is what I always wanted, but could never figure out how to get. Act two, integration. Every soul chooses a core wound that, if it can be transformed in this lifetime, will actually become our core gift by the end.
Just a couple of weeks ago, I was in that liminal state after coming out of a dream, and I was communicating with my higher self. Now, I've known that my core wound is rejection. And my higher self said that rejection is actually the core wound of the masculine energy. And then I asked, what's the core wound of the feminine energy? And I was told abandonment. So I'm like, okay, I'm getting some answers here. What's the core wound of humanity? It's this lie of separation. And then we actually talked about this as a polarity map.
Yeah, because the gift is that separation allows us to witness each other, to see each other. And that's the gift that comes from the wound.
Yeah, and I've spent some time doing polarity mapping. And so there's a polarity between the masculine and the feminine, and you're somewhere on this infinity loop at any given moment. Are you getting into the downside of the masculine, which is the rejection wound, or are you getting into the upside, which is this non-attachment to outcomes? And then as you get into the feminine, the wounded feminine is around abandonment, but the upside of the feminine is receiving love without need. And what you and I talked about is this idea of moving from a binary into a trinary, which is creating a divine child, this ability to witness beauty in the other. So we had a philosophical conversation, and then I made this chicken scratch diagram that I actually still have right here in front of me, and I'm adding to on a daily basis.
Also, in the We book by Robert Johnson, he explains how we have left the feminine behind. We have kicked her out. We have abandoned her.
Mm.
So your map made total sense to me.
Yeah. You actually read this book. I don't read so good. So you found an abridged version of the book on YouTube that I could listen to. And this book was fantastic. It tells the story, which was apparently the very first romantic myth. And it's the myth of Tristan and Isolde back, I think it was what, the 11th century, maybe.
Middle Ages, yeah.
Yeah. And this story absolutely gripped me. Basically, the We book is an interpretation of this original myth and how it created the patriarchy, essentially. And what I saw in this myth was my own projection of the feminine onto an idealized woman that I would put onto a pedestal and then, like Tristan, really try hard and act to try to either win or possess this idealized feminine. And the other thing that you helped me to realize with a bunch of parts work, that back in grade 4, I started this tendency to find a woman that I was attracted to, and I would use my abilities, my social skills, whatever, to get into emotional intimacy or into the friend zone. And this part we called the positioner. So this part wants to possess the interest of the feminine, and it goes and does all of these things. But because I know those things are independently valuable, I will never get fully rejected. But also, because I'm trying so hard, I will never be fully chosen for who I am, for just being. I will never know if I'm chosen for what I do or for who I am.
Yeah.
And that's the trap or the fallacy that we discovered in doing parts work with the positioner.
Yeah. I realized that my exile had also started at a very young age. So, growing up as a young girl with two much older brothers who were my primary caregivers, I exiled my animus away because I interpreted that my big brothers were always going to be bigger and smarter and faster and more experienced, and I was never going to be able to catch up. And I think that was when I really disowned my animus for the first time. I felt completely deflated and defeated. And so I never even tried to compete in this masculine dominated world. I just decided to go the complete opposite direction and swim in the introspective, intuitive, feeling, feminine experience of life. I had a dream of my animus showing up as a thrift store owner, and he was covered in the scars of these third degree burns. And when I did the dream interpretation and I did the parts work around it, that was when I was able to bring this animus, this golden shadow, out of exile. And the animus thrift store owner gave me an experience of what it would be like to come out of the shadows and into the light, to actually be able to offer treasure to the world and for it to actually be received. And so I did this little dream ritual that you can see in the picture of the coins representing the treasure that my animus exile has to offer, and the keys that he will never lose so that no one can ever put him in the shadows again. He can always stay in the light. And the crown, just to remind him of the golden genius and brilliance that are wanted in this world.
Beautiful. I think a great place to end this act is with this gorgeous quote from Don Miguel Ruiz. He said, "Love is the perfect balance of generosity and gratitude." The way I interpret this quote is that generosity is that masculine energy of action and giving, and gratitude is that feminine energy of appreciation and receiving. And
Mhm.
what he's talking about is this perfect balance or this equilibrium between the two. And I think in our relationship, one of us is out of balance, the other one goes and helps to hold up that mirror so that we can see and we can better harmonize our masculine and feminine energies.
Yeah, we've been able to keep each other on track.
Act 3, enactment. So back to Plotkin's map here, and now we're at our present day. I think you and I both feel pretty confident that we're now in the enactment phase, which you're out of the cocoon and you're starting to flap your wings. And Plotkin actually gives quite a technical term to the wing flapping. He calls it an experimental threshold crossing. So we're crossing this threshold of the cocoon into the garden. And now we have wings. So we're flapping these wings and we're going, hey, do I really have wings? How has that experience been for you to be doing these ETCs in your life?
I've lost friends and relationships and old containers from my caterpillar life. And I'm flapping my wings and I'm getting this permission to do so from within me, from my animus, not from outside of me, not from some archetypal masculine finally giving me a permission slip or an invitation. And so it's really empowering. And what I've discovered is that the more bold and authentic I am, the more I seem to be attracting people who, instead of asking me, "Are you sure you want to do that?" People who are like, "Yes, you should definitely do that." And I call them other butterflies like you who are cheering me on. And so it's just been really meaningful.
Yeah, I've had the exact same experience. And I love this quote, you can't speak butterfly language with caterpillar people. And that sadly is true. That being said, when you connect with other people in the cocoon, it's just magic. And we actually created a Telegram group called the Cocooners, and there's 20 people in there. And we're doing our ETCs and flapping our wings. And it's literally the safest space that I've ever been a part of. People are full of encouragement and choosing authenticity over belonging. And so this has turned what could be a really isolating and harrowing journey into one that is full of joy and excitement for the future that we have in front of us. I can't believe how far I have come in 3 months. I went from not even knowing what an anima was to actually giving her a name and a face. She told me her name is Valerie. So what you're looking at here is my anima. I used AI, and she told me that all of these hearts that I have been collecting and I have all over my altar that I seem to find as stones and leaves have been shown to me by Valerie. When I work out now, I think about doing it for Valerie. The whole process of finding love for myself is about connecting with my inner anima and no longer externalizing the need for validation. A big part of this has also been to once and for all shed the armor that has been surrounding my own heart for my entire life. I now see and feel from my heart center. And it has been my anima that has helped me to do that. And if I have fear, I simply share what my fear is. And every single time people respond to that vulnerability with love. I know that fear begets fear and love begets love. So all I got to do is operate from a place of love. And this is what you have more than anyone helped me to develop within myself.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. We get messages from our anima and from our animus, and then we check in with each other and say, is this really right? Is this how we should be doing it? And the safety that we found in our relationship with each other has made you feel safe enough to put your sword down. And the opposite for me, it's made me feel safe enough to actually put some thorns up. I had a dream recently where Animus showed me the fear in me that is keeping him from completely integrating into me. And Animus calls that part the cock blocker. And basically, that part is just a fear that, okay, if I really do have boundaries, if I really do have thorns, if I really do take up a sword and protect myself, isn't that going to compromise belonging, which is what I've always really wanted and desired? And as soon as I was able to do the parts work and integrate it, I was able to really start living this authentic, audacious life without fear, but with a lived experience now with you that being assertive and being authentic is not going to get me farther away from belonging and closeness and intimacy. It's actually going to get me a lot closer to those things. So I don't know why we didn't think of this shit a long time ago.
Nah,
We have each
88%.
other.
Yeah, I have 88% male energy, so that's my excuse. I
And
didn't
I
even,
was just swimming in my inner world,
yeah.
trying to escape this external one.
Mhm.
There's an old Pan-American indigenous prophecy across a lot of different tribes that the eagle, who represents the masculine, and the condor, who represents the feminine, will be reunited. And when that happens, the masculine and feminine will be harmonized once again. And that wholeness within each person will allow them to actually witness and see one another. And that will be the beginning of a whole new humanity, the prophecy says.
That actually reminds me of the first time I ever did 5-MeO. I received this vision of fear versus love. And fear was like little children that were fighting against their parents who were love. And the parents, of course, were just standing there watching with their arms open, and the kids were really mad. And they were finding all of these innovative ways to attack their parents, to attack love. And of course, love conquers all. Love always wins out in the end. And I, as someone in the audience, was just appreciating the grand drama of how innovative and determined fear was, but how there was no possible way. And what I'm feeling now after spending 3 months working so closely with you, well, it's not been work, actually, it's been more like a lot of play, is this prophecy that you're talking about with the eagle and the condor is really set in the backdrop of this grand play, which starts with the lie of separation, creates then the fear versus love polarity, which is embodied within the feminine and the masculine energies. And I have this great feeling that it is the harmonization of the masculine and the feminine, which will allow us to more easily choose love in every now moment and eventually defeat fear. And if this vision is that for the first time that one human can properly see another human without projecting themselves onto that other human, I believe what that projection is fear. So
Yeah.
once we can look at each other with only love in our eyes, we then become this gateway to humanity's ascension. So
And
that may be too ambitious for us, but I love thinking big and having something to shoot for. It's been absolutely just the greatest gift. Your friendship and all of our voice notes and all of our discoveries and explorations of this harmonization of masculine and feminine have meant everything to me and to my growth and development. So I just deeply appreciate you and who you are.
I totally agree. I think we are getting closer every day to this harmonization of the masculine and feminine within us. And then we're getting to practice and play it out with each other. This wholeness that we have discovered inside of ourselves is allowing us to see each other clearer than I think either one of us have ever experienced witnessing another. And I'm starting to believe that a hopeful future really is possible for humanity. A new form of humanity really is possible. I think that the end is just a new beginning where separation still exists, but it's in its proper place. And so instead of continuing to drive us apart, it brings us together. It allows us to see each other, to witness each other. And I think we're going to give birth to a whole new humanity.
Sign me up.